Hi everyone. Hi, thanks very much, Gabe. Yeah, so I got asked to come here with Understanding Ag to talk a bit about the profitability side of things in the UK circumstance.
I was supposed to introduce him.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, Gabe. It never happens like that. So I have worked with Gabe and the team for a while now. First and foremost, a farmer, but yeah, we do a bit with Gabe and Alan. When they tell me to go somewhere, I go. You don't say no to the big guy when he asks. So yeah, it's one of those things. We are here with Understanding Ag. Obviously, they are regenerative ag consultancy business made up of farmers teaching farmers. We go out and talk about it, tell them what we're doing, how we went about it, try and avoid people making the same mistakes that we did. Led by Gabe and Alan, set up by Gabe and Alan and the team. They created the 634, a principle-led system that allows us to, generate profits, have a regenerative farm without necessarily understanding all the science that's going on in the background. Much like Gabe's just said there, we know it's happening, but we can do this without getting bogged down in the science, which is a really, really rewarding way of going on. We want to help farmers get to real swift regenerative principles really quickly. Team's a great team, loads of stuff done over the years. I'm not dwelling on it too much. Realistically, you can read it, but what I'm trying to say is that this is a principle-led system that is over 37 million acres now. It's a system that is done in all environments, all ecosystems throughout the world. So the idea that we can sit there and say, it might not work here isn't necessarily true. We know it works everywhere. We've just got to buy in and deploy these techniques the best way we can to make sure that we get the best results. So yeah, we're going to talk a bit about this, not so much on the Understanding Ag side of things, but on what we can do on farm to create a bit more profitability and how that works for us. Bit about me, tenant farmer from up in Northumberland, Hexham. Still got to pay the rent, still got to make sure that I can keep the landlord lady happy, which they're very good with me. They're very good. They let me do my weird, wonderful things, and yeah, it's having that relationship that lets you do that. In Northumberland, currently about 800 acres. Used to be slightly more, but a bereavement. We lost a little bit of land last year, so we've cut the sheep numbers back, hence them being around the 500 mark now. We are over varying land types. FBT, AHA, annual lets, we have a bit of everything, all of it tenanted. We only own about 17 acres total, so yeah, we've got bills to pay, same way most of the people here do. So yeah, like I say, we're down to about 500 lamb and ewes. We cut them back when we lost a bit of land. I'm a cowman, love the cattle, stay with the cattle as much as possible. My brother likes the sheep, so I tend to push him towards the sheep, which is a great way of working things for me. Cattle-wise, we have 180 calf and females a year. They are the bread and butter, the things that we really like doing, our favourite enterprise, all that sort of stuff. Arable, we used to grow a lot of arable. We've cut it back recently. People talk about arable being the money-making part of the system, but there's an awful lot of costs that you don't see with the arable. What's it cost us further down the line? What's it cost us? So in our business, we still grow about 75 acres, sell some when we can. Not very much, I have to say now, and we still we use it to feed some of the cattle sometimes. That number's coming down and down and down. Eventually, I'd like to think we'll get to a grass-based system, much like Gabe, much like many people out there. But we're part of a bigger team, so you do things at the team's pace, not just at mine. So we'll make sure we work together and we go at the right pace for everyone. We utilise grants, subsidies where appropriate. We're not too evangelical about that, using the SFI, the countryside stewardship, to make sure that we can transition, get the farm functioning for us, so when that subsidy disappears, which is going to, we're in a really strong position going forward. I would advocate for anyone out there, get involved into it as much as you can now and use it as a tool to make sure that we can get there without the risk. Because by the time that subsidy's gone and they've backed out of helping us, it's really going to be a sticky slope for some of us. So I'm a big advocate of use it where we can. We've got all different types of soil, sand, gravel, not much loam, sadly, but a bit of clay and peat up on the top. The one resounding thing we have out of place is stones everywhere. So we are a very, very stony farm, which is now a bit of an unfair advantage for us for outwintering on. We don't necessarily have to earn the right. A lot of the time we can just sort of jump straight into that, which is good. And currently still just farmers, no secondary income streams. There's no big windmills backing this up. There's none of that. We are farmers on tenanted land farming and hopefully doing a good enough job that we get a bit more land every now and then. So we're going to talk about yields. What is yield? I jumped onto Google and got this wonderful quote off them. In agriculture, yield refers to the amount of crop or product harvested per unit. It's a measure of productivity, essentially how much stuff you get from the given space. So yield comes in all forms. I think for us, it's something that we are enamored with as farmers. we like to think yield is the be-all and end-all. Unfortunately, yield can also be very detrimental if it's the only metric that we focus on. So we're going to talk a bit here about how can we look beyond yield, how can we look at the margin rather than the yield, and that's the important stuff. I'm just looking at my notes here because this system's not working at all properly. We are taught to chase the yield. It's what, I mean, there's two contests there, the yield contest and the real results yield challenge. They're just two contests. If you Google online, that's what comes up. Yield has been taught to us as the main thing to chase. So we need to sort of look at that and think, is it the right metric to be chasing around on? The first thing we've got to acknowledge in my mind is that yield has actually achieved a lot for us over the years. We've doubled what we could produce. We've fed the world. When the world was at crisis point, we managed to really actually achieve a huge amount of improvements in yield, a huge amount of saving the planet, saving the population from starvation. Chasing yield has done us as a humanity a great favor in terms of stopping that. However, there's an unforeseen amount going on in the background that necessarily hasn't done us any favors, and that's what we sort of need to focus on. For me, yield has never really been the driver on the farm. I've always been a numbers man and crunching numbers to make sure that we're going after margin, not yield. And that's the bit that sometimes can get lost a bit in translation when you talk to farmers. I think a lot of farmers like to think that we do go for the margin, but when push comes to shove, we quite often get caught chasing that yield, and what consequences will that have later on. That yield system, the cracks started to appear. You know, it can't run like that forever, pushing yield, getting as much as we can out the land, making sure that it's all working for us. That cannot happen forever. So cracks have started to appear. When we really dig into it now, we see that the population is now it's about half now supported by synthetic fertilizers. Now that has done us a fantastic way of getting out of that food shortages worldwide. But we know that we cannot continue on a system that is supported by synthetic fertilizers. We just know that now. I think in our defense, slightly in our ignorance, we did not realize what we were doing to the land, pushing for that yield. We do know now, and we know that we cannot sustain the amount of production that we're doing with the methods we've used. So we need to start digging around and looking at different ways of doing that. So the yield has been a huge driver. It's done us some good over the years. That sort of time is coming to an end. The hidden costs of yield have really started to rear their heads. We see there the yield was the focus. That's what we could see above the surface, but all these other things were lurking underneath that now have started to come in. The soil degradation, the system rigidity, human stress that goes with that yield chasing, the monetary value that we need, all of that starts to add up. And we're probably at a point now where the pressure of that is really starting to bite with farmers as we look at down the barrel of subsidies disappearing and all that sort of stuff. So we need to really focus on, you know, the hidden cost that came with yield. Yield is not resilience. Yield is not profit. It's not margin, any of that stuff. Yield is just yield. It's just one metric, and we need to stop focusing on that. The hidden costs of yield, what happened? 67% of dairy farms have gone under since 1995. We are seeing huge amounts of background problems with yield. Farming numbers are disappearing. I think it's 22%. I can't see on my screen, but I think it says 22%-ish there of farms, of numbers of farms have gone since this sort of production model was in, this industrial model. Numbers of farmers is way down. However, profitability is not up. Farmers, we should be making more money now. Someone's making more money off it. It's certainly not the farmers at the minute. I think we've got recent data that said less than 10% for every pound makes its way back to the farmers. So 90% of that's disappearing into that food system. As farmers, we can chase that extra bit there. For me personally, I want to make a system that is resilient and functional with a commodity price. You know, for me as a business model, that's a lot easier than chasing that extra margin that Gabe manages to really do at home. Some people don't want to direct sell. I'm probably one of them, unfortunately. But it's just what we've got to sort of put our head around now, that someone's making a lot of money out of this, and it's not us, unfortunately. So the myth of efficiency, industrial agriculture claims that efficiency makes everything cheaper. Cheaper food, more production, everything's rosy. That's a false promise. We cannot continue to do that, like we said. The whole thing is centered around selling us something. We're going to use a product, someone's making money off us, and we're not actually getting the profit out of that. Efficiency is definitely not cheap. When we take in the cost, the toll that goes into the land, the human health, all that stuff, food is certainly not cheap at the minute. And there's some great people who've done some great talks on this, and I'm not going to focus on that too much, but we need to know that's what's happening. There's so many other metrics that's going on in there that we should be focusing on in terms of the ecosystem efficiency, the 4 ecosystem processes. Are we enhancing those as we farm, or are we degrading them? Because if we're degrading them, that battery's going to run out at some point, and we're going to have to recharge it. So we need to have that in the back of our minds. Are we enhancing life here on the farm, or are we making things worse by doing what we're doing? So where's chasing yield got us? Well, we've now got a biodiversity loss all over the UK. I think we're at an all-time low in biodiversity, sadly, which is a sad fact. I think that's the world over as well. Gabe, you'll testify as well. It's a bit of a shame. We are heavily dependent on fertilizers, which is also a bit of a problem. We are factory farming to a certain extent. We don't like to talk about it, but it's definitely happening in certain places. We need to make a distinction. That's not happening everywhere, certainly not. But that rhetoric, that story that comes out, that's what the public hears about. They don't hear all the good stuff, they hear the bad stuff. So we need to try and make sure that as farmers, we're putting ourselves on that, slightly on a pedestal if you want, that we are looking after the things and we're producing really good, healthy food as we go about it. We've got the stories of all of this methane, carbon being released, all that sort of stuff. The cow's to blame for the problem. I mean, whoever thought the cow would be to blame for the problem all those years ago? It's just unheard of that that's come out. Nutrient density of food's down. Soil health has substantially degraded. Now, a lot of us will have been working for our entire lifetime in a degraded soil. That's something that I think there's no doubt about. I thought in our lifetime, I don't think we've ever seen a truly healthy soil. I doubt we ever will. We don't know how far we can push it. We don't know how far we can fix the land to. But we know that we're working in degraded soils now. Now, degraded soil leads to runoff, erosion, all that stuff, just all the stuff that we apply as farmers rushing off into the water, and then they blame us for that. That's another story we could do without. We do have some questions to answer for that, because it is happening. We are letting stuff get into the rivers. The River Wye down in Wales is a real example of that now. We need to be slightly more protective of our industry, that we don't have these negative messages flowing around. So this yield model has sort of brought that about. We are spending more. The graph shows there we've got higher inputs going in. We're not necessarily making any more profit. We're just taking more money to the table when we go. It's a bit like gambling, but with more and more risk year on year. So we need to try and get away from the yield model. Mr. Einstein steps up to here. Many of the things you can count don't really count in farming, and many of the things you can't count, they really do count in farming. And I think that as farmers, some of the stuff that we really want to count and we really want to be able to put a data and a figure onto, because that's the bit that matters and makes us productive and profitable, is the hardest things to challenge. Now, if I ask everyone here to put their hand up, who can tell me how much money they made off their sheep or lambs or crops last year? Most people, if you want to put your hands up, would be able to say, yeah, we roughly know where our figures stand, where we're making money, where we're not. If I was to say, how much soil aggregates did you build last year? What depth did it go down to? How long will that help us for in the future? Well, we can't put a figure on that. We can't quantify that to the level of how is that going to help us on the farm and for how long. So for us to be chasing a dream of fixing that it's a continual process. We need to make sure that we are continually enhancing the land as we go. So the hard truth is it yield or profit or margin? Which is the most important part? And it's definitely margin. The recurring question we get all the time, soil health, totally buy in. Love that story, makes loads of sense. Can it be done profitably? Because that's the question that a lot of people don't think is possible. I would argue it can be done properly. Gabe would 100% testify in the end there, and is proof of the pudding that it can be done properly. There's many farmers here in the UK who are making a really good profit out of this. So I just had someone at the stand 10, 15, 20 minutes ago who was saying the same question. Can we do it profitably? Yes, we can do this profitably, but we need to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row that allow us to do so. If we focus on just the economic returns, that's when we break down. There's a whole host of social benefits, environmental benefits, and the whole thing ties in together. So if we're only going to focus on the economic returns, we're going to fall down there. We've got to know that to have good economic returns, we have to have a functioning ecosystem. We have to have an ability to allow us to farm at a social level that allows us to get the benefits from it. So we've got to continue to be thinking about these social benefits, the environmental benefits that drive the profitability on the farm. If we focus on extracting again, yield, we lose the environmental and the social benefits that go with it. So regenerative wins by us reducing inputs is the main sort of win that we see on the farm here. Less chemicals, less fertilizer, less intervention. You know, if we're here with our chemistry inputs and we can drop it down to here as we increase our biological response, that's when we're going to see the same sort of outputs, but without that huge cost that goes with it. So we need biology taking place and repairing or removing the need for that chemical application that a lot of our farms have become dependent on. Now, a lot of us here probably are of the same mindset that we know this, we want to do this, this is how we all want to farm. I would say the bulk of the farming world still has a big dependency on chemicals. So we need to get into this mindset that we need to make sure that what we are doing is lowering that chemical input and enhancing biology. There's a TND test, a total nutrient digestion test, will tell us how much nutrition's in the soil. The only thing that can unlock that bank vault of all that nutrition into our crops, into our production, is biology. We can't falsify that, we can't fake it, we can't create a false environment that allows us to access it. Biology holds the key. So if we can get biology functioning in our farm, that is the direct way to get into a profitable farm. Gabe said before, when the question was, what's the one thing you can do to create a profitable farm? It's have a healthy soil. Improve that soil health. That is the one way that you can get this. So we've got to focus on the whole lot. One of the stumbling blocks when people ask us about this, can we do this, is that it often requires change that many of us are not comfortable with. Some of us don't want to hear, and a lot of the recurring question is, how little can we do to still tick the box to say that we might be regenerative? Now, the more we buy into this, if I were to talk at the 634 principle of understanding ag, the more we do the 634 principle, it's a exponential growth, the better that we will see the returns on that. Now, if we just focus in on a 2, 1, 2 without the 634, we're not buying into the whole system, that's not going to see the results as quick as we can. So the more we change, the more we buy in, the more results we're going to see. So what do? This is what I did at my place. We sat down and we sort of said, right, context key. This is the whole point, is that how can we make this fit our farm? Because every farm's different. It's not going to work for you, what works for me, vice versa. The whole thing's different. So social context is huge. What type of life and business are we trying to build? Is that going to fit with my wife? Is it going to fit with my kids? If I said to my wife I could move the cows 8 times a day and see some really good benefits to the land, that's not going to fit my social context, because she would not be very impressed with that. So what we need to do is make sure that we fit a context around what we can do in our family life. That's so important. You know, what are the pressures have we got in our life that we can work in around? It sets the boundary conditions for what's manageable and meaningful on the farm. Environmental wise, what we're doing with, what is the land suited for, and can we regenerate it at the same time? Now, if we go back through the historical records, have we got land that wants to be woodland with high fungal components, high stuff like that? Do we want that land? Is that what the land wants to do naturally? Then let's lean that way into it. Let's build a system that leans with the land rather than fighting with it all the time, because often we as farmers impose ourselves on the land. We decide how we want to farm it. We decide that we want to do certain cattle, certain sheep, all that sort of stuff. And then it comes back to bite us, because we're forcing our will on the farm, on the land. I thought you were going to say something there, Gabe. So if we can just find out what the land wants to do, read it slightly better, be more observant with what's going on, it can be really beneficial in a symbiotic relationship. The more we ignore that, the more friction it's going to create. And then financial context, I've said it last, but actually, obviously, this one is the one that drives the whole thing. It's the importance of it. What do we need to pay? How much do we need to pay? And when do we need to pay it? It's got to work on a cash flow context, cash flow system, financially driven. We need to have all of our data, cash flows, enterprise costs. I mean, Gabe's literally just touched on it there. If you are not following your business model, creating a business model and then following it and following those numbers right through, it's really, really difficult to do this. It's still a business, and we're still here to make money. So do this, create your business, set your environmental, social and economic goals, and build a system or an enterprise around each section, because that's what's going to drive profitability on the farm. Do it and do it again and do it again, because if we don't do it, now we've got models for this if people want to sort of share, join into this sort of stuff. There's plenty of different companies out there who have them as well. I'm not saying we're the only ones, but there's plenty of ways that we can do this very quickly. It's not the onerous task that I think a lot of people think it is. So if we can crunch into enterprise numbers and really figure it out, we can start to make a profitable system. I've half touched on this, but people think that regenerative farming is a bit of a get out of jail free card, an easy win. We're going to go regenerative, save the planet, do all the good, and everything will just fall into place. It does not work like that. It's still a business. We're still creating a business model that is very, very, very difficult to employ. It's still on us as farmers to be good at what we do, because sometimes I think when we go regenerative, you come hands off and you think, well, it'll take care of itself. It's still on us as farmers to be really good at what we do. I know loads of conventional men that are good. I know loads of regenerative men that are good. Similarly, I know both stamps that are not good. And it's on us as farmers as to how good we're going to be and follow through on our numbers in our farming. So I'm going to take a very quick dive into our suckler cows. Have a quick drink first.
That is water, by the way. Just to make sure.
Thanks, John. So quick dive in our suckler cows just to show this is not a complete set of data I'm going to show here. This is basically, we model every year. I do a sort of budget plan for how we're going to do. This is the most consistent bit of data that I pulled together over the last 15 years. So I run this every year. It's the most complete stuff that I filled in every year, which allows us to sort of see how the trajectory of it is. Now, we can probably crunch into these numbers and you could pull it apart and suggest, well, maybe that's not right, that's not right. I don't want to get too bogged down in the ifs and buts and what is and isn't right. What I want to show maybe is more the trajectory over this time period. That we've done this model every year at the same time, at the same point, and it shows how our system has moved on over the last 15 years. I'm also certainly not suggesting that we've got the complete enterprise at all. This is a system that works at hours. We've developed it over a long time, and there's certainly better systems out there, I'm sure. But we found a model that wanted to be a profitable suckler cow, and I think we're just about getting to the point where we have a really profitable suckler cow. Hopefully it'll just highlight the evolution on management, genetics approach, the financials, and it shows what we've done. So historically, our suckler cows, we always wanted to be the best cows we possibly could. Wanted to sell them as yearlings, strong stores. This is me in 2015. I found this video on my phone, proudly looking at the cows in the sheds, chuffed to bits about some Charolais calves. It's very, it was at the time, it was something that I was very happy with. Big cows, big strapping cows, loads of Charolais calves. Look at them in the shed here, enjoying themselves. It's sort of a counterintuitive now to what we kind of do a little bit. We used to bring them in the shed quite regularly early on, and that in itself is the biggest profitability killer we can do on the farm. So we used to have the Belgian blue types, Libby Dreb types, 3/4 bred types, bigger, heavier cows. Big weights, 700 to 900 kilos, trying to carry a big cow, which would produce a big calf. Mainly put the Charolais sire, loads of inputs, feed, fertilizer, routine, worming, medicine, vaccines, all that sort of stuff. Forage was generally grown with fertilizer and chemicals. We used to use a lot of fertilizer, 70 to 90 tons a year, which is obviously quite a lot. So we've now pulled that back quite a lot, but we were very conventional farmers and good at it. I don't think there was a real problem with the way we did it. We used to make quite a decent turnover, decent profit. It was all fairly rosy. We just wanted to change to see if we could make more, really. That was the reason we tried. Set stocked with field by field rotations. We didn't necessarily do any formal rotation with the cattle. Large portion we wintered in the shed, the cows, which is obviously the norm. Through November to March, and when we did put them outside, it was on brassicas, monoculture brassicas with bales in. Generally, looked like the Somme by the time we'd finished. It was completely upside down. So any good that we might have done with our management was completely undone with the way that we managed. Sorry, any good we might have done with our cropping or systems was completely undone with our management of them. And that's something I think we've got to be aware of as farmers, that there's an awful lot more than just putting the right stuff in the ground and then expecting it to go well. So that was our suckler herd, probably 2012, that would be the year. The video is obviously a bit shorter from that, but we used to show a lot of cattle as well. Used to love showing cattle, still do. It's a great experience, just doesn't pay any bills is the problem. So so this is our cows now. We try to be the most weight possible per acre to sell at weaning. We sell the calves off the mothers 6 to 8 months. I wanted to get really good at that aspect of it before we got too carried away with layering down on feeding things out. I wanted to make sure, especially after Brexit in 2015, I was in the impression the first thing that would go was subsidy, so I wanted to make sure we had a really profitable cow because that was my bread and butter and what I enjoyed doing. So we've reduced the cow side down to 600 to 800. We've removed the Belgian blue, Limmy Cross sort of side to it. We've gone to stabilizers. Forage grown with sunshine and showers now, rather than all the chemicals and fertilizer we used to use. AMP grazing deployed, did that around 2019. I didn't realize we could do more with cows. When you suddenly realize that, you suddenly realize what we can achieve. That has been the single biggest change on our farm is moving to AMP grazing methods. This year we outwintered everything until February. They came into calve and then we kicked them back out. So our winter's gone from what was quite a long winter down to at most 6-8 weeks if they don't calve quick, but if they calve quick they can be back out within 2-3 weeks. So what we're trying to do is cut down on that the winter feeding. It cost me about £2.70 a day in the shed. This last year with the price of straw and the price of silage where I am, it was really expensive. It's sub 50p a day in the outside on the deferred grass grazing. So we're talking about clicking £2 a head per cow per day. When we're talking about an enterprise that is marginal at best historically, that's just pure profit every single day. And we're trying to outwin in a way that we don't reseed at the end of the winter. We're not spending any downtime with crops disappearing. It's on deferred grass that's grown where it is. They move onto it, graze it, and come away. And that saves us a huge amount of downtime and a huge amount of repair in the land later on. Profitable wins, yeah, we think we're building aggregates as we go. Now, have we nailed that? Absolutely not. Will we ever nail it in my lifetime? Probably not, although Gabe will tell us we can do it far faster than we believe we can. But I'm good, but I'm not great yet. So we're doing a good job. We're proving those fungal communities as we go, which is the key to this whole thing. Aggregates in the soil, fungal communities doing their job. We could talk about this particular aspect of it for a whole afternoon. We haven't got time for that, unfortunately, so we're just going to whip straight on. But if we can build that aggregates, build that fungal component of the soil, that's what's going to win it. The forage-focused diet, now we used to use a lot of cereal feed. We used to use a lot of brassicas, crops going in and out, recycling crops, high yield, all that sort of stuff. If we can just AMP graze over deferred stuff, like I said before, the cost savings in that is unbelievable. I'm a huge believer that we cannot yield our way into profit. A lot of farms that currently will be able to cut inputs drastically by following any sort of protocol, and when we do that, we'll see margin follow suit very, very quickly. We try and do a lot more observations. Now, this is something that I have to say, since Gabe and Alan sort of took me under the wing all those years ago, that's something that I was not very good at. It transpires. I thought I was good at it, but I didn't know how to read the land. I didn't know how to understand what was going on. Building back that observation skill was massive. So we're looking at observations. We're trying to make decisions based off what we're seeing, sticking a spade in the ground, making decisions off what we're seeing there. We're not relying on someone coming in and taking some soil samples first. We're not relying on someone coming in and telling us that we have a deficiency in this, a mineral deficiency there. We're going to use these observations, and we're going to make sure that we've got aggregates going down at depth, roots going down to access that water and mineral cycle that allows us to know that everything's functioning without us having to put inputs in. So the video there is a kestrel coming in. So every day in the winter, we have 2 or 3 kestrels come and fly above the cows. They move into the next paddock, kick up the grass, stirs up some mice, in come the kestrels, get a free meal, and off we go. Now, does it matter the kestrels there? Probably not. It's nice to see it, love seeing it. On a farm level, is it going to save things for me? Probably not. But what it does show, there's a functioning ecosystem there. The soil food web's working to show those indicator species are there, which means that ecosystems function there, and I'm not paying for that to happen. Dung beetles, I never thought I'd find myself lying on the floor looking into manure. And yet here I am, I've spent many a day now looking for them. We're finding big geotroop eyes coming in, all that sort of the big ones. That's a really rewarding feeling that we've done that, but at the same time, that guy's going down, he's opening up aerating soil for me, he's spreading that minerals up and down the profile, he's spreading biology. We've got critters doing the jobs for us now, rather than us paying to do it ourselves. So that self's a profitable win. I'm a huge fan of removing exposure to uncontrollables. Build a system whereby you're not exposing yourself to drought, you're not exposing yourself to huge wet periods. Now, that might sound simple in a sense, it is, but as farmers, if we then pull a crop out and then put it in, every time we do that, we've opened ourselves up to some dry spell coming in and kicking us. So if we've got the crops going round in a circle, grow it, graze it, defecate it back down, go again, we're not opening ourselves up to being found out. Now, this spring has been hugely testing here because the spells came in dry so early, and that essentially made us, it found out who was and was not resilient this year. It's been a real hard spring. We did that though, because the weather's going to do what the weather's going to do. But have we come out of the winter with cover on, roots down, aggregates built in the soil that doesn't expose us to being found out? Because we can't control the weather, but we can control how much it impacts on us. We can't control how much fertilizer price costs, but we can control how much fertilizer we're going to use on our farm. Same with straw, same with feed, the whole lot. If we can reduce all of our exposure to uncontrollables, we can create that slow, steady profit that we want. The boom-bust system is not one that we want to be in. The bank manager, I was at a talk recently and saw a bank manager, it was actually recently a talk, about 20 years ago, and he said something that resonated with me really well. He said, you want to be the first one into profit and the last one out of it. So that ultra-low input system, the one we're gaming for, is the one that's going to get us there. The boom-bust cycle, yeah, we can have a couple of good years, but as soon as that goes against us and we drop straight into loss, that's when we get found out as a business. We want to be slow, steady profit, and now if we can start maximizing more profit by taking on all that extra stuff, taking on the extra yield, the extra margins, that's when we're going to start making some super big profits as well. But our baseline model, our fundamental building blocks of our business has got to be able to withstand all those uncontrollables. So get those out your system. We do not want anything to do with those. Mindset's got to be right. We've got to go straight to this profit over yield. Everything has to be margin. So it's absolutely critical to do that. Pride's super expensive. We used to spend a lot of time showing calves. Loved it. Still love it. I think there's a huge skill set involved in all of that, and I have every... I think the guys who do it make a fantastic job of it. I think that for every one guy making a fortune, there's 500 guys trying to be that one guy losing a fortune. So that it's a very, very narrow little triangle there where one person or two people or three or four is doing a really good job of it and making a lot of money. And there's an awful lot of people losing a lot of money. So I'm a huge fan of making sure we get our mindset right and we get out of that mindset that showing calves, making all that sort of stuff is going to make you a lot of money, because it just doesn't, unfortunately. So this is our Suckless 2009. Like I said, that we are... This is a recurring system that I created years ago. We can pull this apart as much as you want if you really want to do that. What I want you all to focus on is the trajectory here of how we've done stuff. This was 2009. We had 40 cows outside, 20 cows were in the shed the whole time. We strip grazed with straw bales as well. So we gave them a straw bale to level up that diet every day. Cattle fed a lot of ensiled forage in the sheds. Sale prices were actually pretty poor around then, as you can see. Input costs currently about 50% of what our current input costs would be now. We also had an autumn herd at this point, so there was less culls because they were dropping into the autumn herd, and we were being a bit too sympathetic with stuff. 68 calves, only 65 were weaned, and that was after we'd bought 4 replacement calves to stick in there. Not a great return, but we were trying to grow show calves that we're going to take to the show, big pulls, cesareans, that sort of model. Homegrown feed was a massive expense. We spent a lot of money on that. Gross margin, certainly not good, based on the fact this is just variable costs. As soon as we put some fixed costs in there, now that's subsidies as well coming in, but fixed costs coming into there, that is going to take us down into the red very, very rapidly. So our system was underpinned by subsidy. We needed that subsidy coming in to make sure that we had a suckler cow. Now, the suckler cow was our favorite thing, so you often turn a blind eye to your favorite thing. But because we wanted to keep this when those subsidies go, we wanted to make money before that happened. So 2016, fast forward 7 years, fairly similar model, 40 outside on cover crops, but no straws now. We decided that we didn't need the straw because it was making too much mess, so we moved that slightly. Strip tilling them, absolute mud bath again. Cattle still sell a lot of forage. Input costs about 40%. Same breeds used. 69 calves, again only 65 getting weaned. 4 replacements bought. Homegrown feed still a large expense. Gross margin improved. Generally down to higher prices that were coming in though. It wasn't necessarily down to the management changes. It was just that the price of outputs had gone up, which was great. Deaths had a cost. I hadn't actually built any deaths into the last model, so I've had to put that into this one. And vet and med had a large increase because we went to a high health status, and that comes with a lot of inherent costs with it, so we did that. 2020 models changing, 15 now outside, so we managed to pull that number down for the ones inside. Cattle still fed a lot, input costs much nearer current prices. We started to bring some stabilizer genetics forward, and we started to move stuff around. We still did cover crops, but with no straw, and we did them in a mob grazing paddock system, so we were trying not to bust the place up with strip grazing. That had huge impact on the next arable crop, the profitability of that was knock-on effect, that was wonderful. 72 calves, but 70 cows weaned, 70 cows weaned, and only 2 replacements bought. We went to some stabilizer genetics, and it doesn't have to be stabilizer, by the way, it can be anything that's more maternal based. We went to that with 2 replacements, but with easy calving genetics on the bulls. Moved away from that show model a little bit, and things got a lot better. Homegrown feeds still increased a lot because we had to put a lot more stubble turnips in without the straw going in there. Gross margins improved, again down to higher prices, but also a lot more calves coming off those animals. More cull cows as we applied some selection pressures. Now we started to put selection pressures into that, and we found out that a lot of our cows were not actually suited to what we wanted them to do. The mob grazing outside for longer, then moving them round, taller grass grazing through the summer, all of a sudden there were selection pressures that we'd applied, and we realised that they weren't quite up to it, some of them. Straw is actually down because the cows are in the shed for a lot less time, but the price of straw had gone up hugely, so the forage costs were much reduced, and the straw costs were down. The gross margin's gone up there. Now again, this is before costs. Are we into profit when fixed costs go in there? Let's be honest, possibly not, but we've made a much better fist of it. So yeah, the system's started to change, and it's starting to show its benefits within our financial model. 2024, this was last year, big changes in the original model. We actually increased the cows because we started to think we were making a really good job of them. Increased the cow numbers up. Deferred grass till January, no cover crops going in, no messing about with stuff coming in and out. Everything on grass, on permanent pastures. And that has been, without a shadow of a doubt, the cheapest way to winter cattle outside without having any incurred cost at the end of that, without spending any money. Much improved forage-fed diet, basically, without the cover crops, and that was huge. 100 calves total, 99 calves weaned, no replacements bought. Genetics has really started to kick in now. We weren't having any of the problems that we had in the past. We actually sold 2 as well. We had a lot of twins, so we started selling stuff. Homegrown feed decreased massively because we weren't using the stubble turnips. Gross margin much improved, again from higher prices, but improved cow-calf ratios. Less culls, the percentage was going down all the time on that. And straw down again, even though the price was up absolutely massively last year compared to what we were at, but we're using less and less straw. So we've now got a gross margin of £590 per cow on the farm, which to me is very much flirting with that profitable cow now. That is without necessarily putting a lot of new infrastructure in, all that sort of stuff. We've just changed our management of the land. So for us, that's been a huge success. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And again, they're still my favourite business. So summary on that is they are massively more forage reared, reduced housing, simplified system, improved genetics that's working for us now, fewer surprises. That's a picture there that we took in November last year after we'd just gone through a summer that peaked at 64 inches of rain, I think we got. Now our annual rainfall is usually about 30 to 35 inches. So we were colossally wet. We've still got the cows outside. We've got all those birds. I don't know if you can see them there flying around. That's the benefits that we're seeing to the environment, the ecosystem, that we're seeing all these species returning and floating around, the cowbirds, as Gabe would call them. So that in itself is a wonderful byproduct of what we're doing. The financials drive it, but the rest of it's coming along with it, which is good. This is David and Cora Cooper and their 3 children. So they've just come across this farm recently. They actually rang me, and we run a little podcast, and he rang and wanted to know if we wanted to go on. I spoke to him for about 15 minutes and thought, yes, I definitely want to bring you on here. They went in 2004. They moved into they bought an open cast farm in the hills of Scotland in Ayrshire. 85% of the land is SPA and triple SI. 90% of its class is rough grazing. We're talking some rough ground here. Currently going through the organic conversion, which he'll happily admit to you is for the financial reasons. Happy to do that because he's nearly there anyway, so it seems pointless not to. Mob grazing every 2 to 3 days with sheep. So he's all sheep. He has 3,400, like I say there, plus hogs. They are just continually moved around. Noise of wormers, feedbox, fertilizer, intensive veterinary interventions as part of the course. They do this when they're needed, but they tend not to do very much. No feed or bought or anything like that. They are actively reducing their output on the sheep, so they were about 130%, and he's pulled it down to about 110 on purpose because he wants to make sure that he doesn't have any hassle that goes with it. Their cost annually per yow is £10.40. This is what I'm talking about as an ultra low input system. When we're talking about can we make profit, when ultra low, that people think of as an ultra low system, is not necessarily an ultra low system. This doesn't have a tractor or anything like that. This farm, it's just the quad bikes. He is running what I would class as an ultra low system. If he's making 50, 60 pounds a lamb per yow, he is way more profitable than most sheep farms currently. And that's without him putting any labor in. He gets them in 3 times a year. He let them get on by themselves for lambing. He's minimal intervention. And I think when you talk to Gabe and Alan a lot of the time, this is what they see sheep farming as, and they come over here and see what we do, how we need to handle them all the time, we need to check them all the time, and they see what we do and they think it's madness. And this guy has pulled this together over 20 years. He now owns 5,000 acres of hill. Which is a huge. I mean, that's just an incredible achievement over the 20 years to have done that. So yeah, he's going to be on the podcast soon, and we'll speak to him a bit more about all this. But this is a great example of getting into that low input system. I've touched on them. I'll not stick on them, but yeah, he's just got to a hugely profitable system. This is a guy who I've worked with the last year. Now, I'm not going to take very much credit for this at all because he was someone who was right on the cusp of doing this. He just needed that little kick over the edge. And James has been fantastic. He mixed family farm in Ripon, North Yorkshire. He's someone who's really focused on stacking enterprises to build that profitability into this. So we've seen one example there of ultra low input. This is a different way of going about it, stacking some enterprises in there. Pastured eggs, mobile house, tulip growing, pick your own wildflowers, bees, selling his honey, all this sort of stuff. He's got pigs coming in the spring. He said to me the other day, I could quite easily incorporate a lot more enterprises into this business. I could quite comfortably do that, fit it all in, no bother at all, because everything he runs just runs in perfect synergy. He says it just works beautifully together. And he's been. I went down and met him for the first time, it'd been nearly 18 months ago, and it's been a really good seeing him progress so quickly with what he's done. Now the guy was already way ahead of the game. So I'm not taking any response or credit for that really, but it's just amazing what you can achieve in a short space of time. So he's gone amp grazing, keeping his cows out. This was one of the things we talked about with him last year. Get those cows outside, out the shed. Now he's reported to me this year that he's seen cow inputs of savings by about £400 he's saved in 1 year, which is an incredible achievement based on what he's done by just keeping things outside on deferred grass. Now we can play around with lots of annual crops, loads of different cover crops to keep cattle on, but ultimately the cheapest way of doing that is on deferred grass that we've looked after, that's ready to go. That's the key here. He's got sheep on the arable crops to reduce his fungicide applications, so that's way down now. So the arable's been slightly more profitable, although yields have obviously been in line with everyone else's, slightly up and down. The biggest things he said was the challenge of setting up a new venture, of going through all that effort, the red tape, the creating the markets that go with that. But if you're willing to invest the time and the effort into that, and I think Gabe will say Paul spends 60% of his time direct marketing and playing around with that, more than that. If you're happy and you make the time to do that, the actual results can be endless in terms of how profitable it can be. It's not for everyone. Certainly not. It's not for me. But if you've got the mindset that you can go after that direct marketing thing and make the most of that, then there's huge amounts of money to be made in that. And this last bit finally is understanding ag's been tracking the 1, 3 and 5 year effects of over 1,600 farms under the consultancy. We see that the days of processed feed drops by 40% after 5 years, veterinary medicine's down, forage biomass production's way up, and the organic matters are going up. This is benefiting everything, and that all will run into the financials. Now, this is something that Kyle pulled together, I think, and he's the science nerd of the team here, and he's fantastic. He knows everything, but he number crunched this, and he was saying the results of this are actually super impressive for what we're trying to achieve. Even on the arable, we're seeing some massive improvements in terms of fuel used, fungicide, soil organic matters going up, synthetic fertilizers pulled right back. If we can get into the system, it's self-perpetuating, it gets better and better and better. If we can just buy into the system and allow this system to thrive, sometimes the best thing that we can do is to do either nothing or a lot less than we currently are. And that's what we're sort of trying to advocate here, is that if we can change our system thoughts, our mentality of what we're trying to achieve, we can see some hugely impressive results of that in a very short space of time. So the recurring question realistically should be, as family farms, how can we afford not to focus on the soil health? Not can we make it profitable, because we can make it profitable without a shadow of a doubt. There's loads of different options to make this profitable, and we can flex into any of these as and when we see fit. The question is, how can we do that if we don't look after the soil? Because that's the one thing that a lot of us as farmers are really neglecting. Now, everyone here probably preaching that they're converted. We don't need to sort of go over that, but let's get that in our heads, especially when we're talking to other people about this. Yes, we can make this darn well work, but it's got to come first and foremost looking at that soil, making sure we've got healthy soil, and the finances will come with that. And hopefully we've showed some stuff there that will be slightly more reassuring for those of you who might be thinking, how do we make this profitable? Final reflections from me, I guess, is chase what's worth chasing, margin, resilience, the legacy of the land. Are we leaving it in a better place than it was when we started? Margin and resilience are the two key things here. The more and more we remove those uncontrollables from the business, the more resilience we're going to have in our business, the more margin we'll be able to get. And then fundamentally, the more joy and time we're going to get. Now, you don't always want time, as I've said that. My wife and kids make me go alpaca walking every now and then, which is not it's not the most enjoyable way to spend your time, unless you're an alpacas out there, and in which case, well done you, fantastic. But yeah, for me, it's about spending time with the family, and this system certainly allows me to do that. And lastly, it's still on us to be good at what we do. It's not a get out of jail free card. It's not something that's going to magically happen just by doing it. We've still got to be good at what we do, and that's one of the key points I think we need to get out of this. That's all from me. I think I've waffled at you all long enough there, so apologies for that. We are going to throw some questions out now. If anyone, how are we doing for time, John?
We'll finish at 5, aren't we?
Yeah, we'll just keep going, don't we?
We'll just stay on the stage.
Yeah, just on the stage. Yeah, no, we'll take a couple of questions now if anyone's got any. If you haven't, that's fine. Gabe's here, so take your moment to get a question with Gabe if you've got one. I know we've done a few already, but if anyone's got any questions on profitability, just shout them out. Just shout. Yeah.
Just shout. Oh, there you go. Roving mic.
Thanks for that. Is there any reason large-scale agriculture can't adopt regenerative principles, but over a much larger acreage, and then just bring down the marginal cost of environmentally friendly farming? At which point, what do small farmers, particularly small farmers in the UK, where we got much smaller acreages, then do to show profitability? And what are the niche farming models open to us? So obviously, I think we will buy the profitability over yield thing, but are we in a holiday period where it's the marginal farmer adopting some of your principles first, but once it gets rolled out over much larger acreages, we're suddenly back in a much harder situation again?
So I'll answer about the large scale. So our smallest farmer has 1/4 of an acre. Our largest farmer is 2.1 million acres. That's large scale. And they're very good. They've adopted it whole hog, okay? So they're really into it. Now, in my mind, to answer your question, this is where you as a farmer need to, again, what can I produce better than anyone else at a lower price point with a higher margin? And what will separate the small farmers is their relationship with the customers, with the clients. Doesn't matter if it's direct marketing or if you're selling to a brand. You are going to have the data, and that you will have the ability to have that relationship, closer relationship, better than a large-scale industrial. Also, what we're finding, the smaller farmers, so to speak, they can really, quote unquote, sell to the consumers, upsell much, much better than a large-scale farm can. On our ranch, we're able to get a premium simply because of our story, the relationship with the consumers. Consumers want to come out. We have an open door policy. Anybody can drive on our farm at any time and look at anything they want, except in the house. We have nothing to hide. And that builds confidence, builds trust. But because of that, we're gonna ask them to pay. And people say, oh, but you'll price yourself out of the market? No, it's absolutely ludicrous. Like right now, I don't know if you want to do the conversion quick for me, John, but like our son is selling chicken breasts for like $19 a pound, which, would be...
12 pounds, something like that. About 12 pounds.
Something like that. Yeah, which, I mean, that's really good money, And in the large-scale farms, consumers just aren't going to pay for that. So also you have the ability to do all these other stacked enterprises. My son now gets $100 a day for people to come out and watch birds on the property. Not hunt, just look at them. I used to let people do that for free. My son's a much better business person than I am. So.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think one of the things that we see with sort of small farms here that we work with at kind of Regenified is that the most successful ones are the ones who are obsessive about planning their business and what they do. There's a guy called Martin who is a very good friend of mine. I'm not sure if he's here right now, but he is absolutely obsessed with finding new things to do and new ways to make money on the 150 acres he farms. And it's really, he's just obsessive, and that is what drives his success. And I think you've really got to love farming and love finding different ways of doing it to make it work. And that's the experience from the people I've met. Stuart, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that'll do. If we want to ask another question, that might be the sensible. Keep moving. Is that all right? Answered that all right?
Oh, there you go. Johnny over there. Sorry.
Thanks very much. I get focusing on profitability, not yield for the individual farmer. But when you take farming overall, if the yield goes down, we import more food. Don't we just export our environmental harm to other countries in order to put food on our plates?
And I'll just say I disagree with that from the standpoint most farms are only producing a small fraction of what they could, because they could be stacking enterprises. And you look at, I use this as an example. Okay, I grow wheat, my neighbor grows wheat. Now I'll out-yield him, but say he out-yields me a little bit more. But that's all he grows, okay? Well, then I'll plant a cover crop, okay? Our bees will produce honey off that, okay? Now I'm producing more per acre. Then I'll graze it with our grass-finished beef, our grass-finished lamb, our laying hens, etc. There's no end. The amount of food, nutrient-dense food per acre, it's not even in the same ballpark. And when I travel around the UK, I look at missed opportunity on farm after farm after farm.
Stuart,
I don't know there's much more to add to that. I totally agree with Gabe on that front, that we are so obsessed with the idea that we're feeding the planet, as it were, and all that sort of stuff, that we're missing out on the stacking enterprises. Now, I know that probably the example there of James's place, he's probably producing a lot more calories per acre, shall we say, than the next guy. because he's got those enterprises stacked in there. So we are certainly not doing ourselves a misjustice by going down this route, because I think actually we can outproduce our neighbours, shall we say?
We can, and that's true. But don't forget, we waste a tremendous amount of food anyway. So what's the point of overproducing when is it fully a third of the food we produce doesn't even reach human mouths? What's that? It seems to me
the last figures I had from 2 years ago, we produced enough food on this planet to feed 11.3 billion people, and we barely have 8 billion. So, yeah.
So it's not a production problem; it's a distribution problem. It's the main bit.
Yep. Just shout it out. I'll repeat it.
As in, I don't quite understand.
From changing from that area from crops. Sorry. Hello.
Roman Mike.
Hello. Can't hear.
Ah.
The point where you change from the cropping system to more armed grazing for your cattle was a pivot point for you. Your figures showed reduced costs but increased output over that term. So that to me was your pivot point.
Yeah, so I think I was the one that drove the arable side at home. I was like obsessed with, I wouldn't say boys and toys, but I wanted to have a lot of gear, and we didn't have a huge amount of arable, possibly a couple of hundred acres at one point, but I was like, oh, that's the bit that makes the money here. But the unseen costs of arable will eat into that system so quickly. So for me, when we shifted away from that annual changing things around, drilling it up, breaking basically all 6 principles of soil health. As soon as we moved out of that system and tried to extend it, and we use like a 5 and 2 rotation now, 5 years of legume and herbage swards or whatever you want to call them, followed by 2 years of barley's all we grow. Don't grow wheat. We just end up with an ultra low input arable. So the arable's become more profitable, and we're carrying the cattle that's more profitable as well. So are we making more money as a business? Well, the input costs have gone up an awful lot, as we all know, over the last few years. So, but we're definitely not we're not drowning like we could have been had we stayed in the same system. So yeah, getting rid of or reducing the arable, which might go against the grain slightly for a lot of people, certainly helped our business, especially the resilience and getting rid of those uncontrollables. Yeah, I was trying to outperform the farm. I wanted to arable. And my dad said it's not suited to that, and then he was right. So I was, had to take that on the chin a little bit.
I'm afraid we just have time. We've just had time called.
Oh, really?
Sorry,
guys.
The bar is closing. I'm sorry, everybody.
Okay.
There you go. Okay.
Well, thanks very much for joining us, guys. That was really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you.